Help us hit our first 1,000 subscribers. Your support drives us to create even more wonderful stories. Thanks for being part of our journey. In this video, I thought my wife was at a yoga retreat until I tracked her to a shady motel where she wasn't just cheating. She was running an entire double life with my brother. It started on a rainy Wednesday afternoon when Mark went into the garage to grab his fishing gear. He hadn't used it in over a year, but his old college buddy invited him to a weekend trip upstate. As he reached behind the dusty shelf, his hand brushed up against something unexpected. A navy blue suitcase he didn't recognize. It was tucked behind a stack of boxes, hidden just well enough that no one would notice unless they were looking. Mark pulled it out, unzipped it slowly, and stared down at a set of folded clothes, a bottle of expensive perfume, and a packet of receipts. The top receipt was from a motel just outside of town. Starlight Inn, room 112, dated 2 weekends ago. His heart skipped. Rachel had told him she was at a meditation retreat that weekend. No phones, no contact. At first, he thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she let a friend borrow the suitcase, but as he flipped through the receipts, they all had her name on them. Rachel Miller, and all of them listed the same check-in time. Friday evening, the same time she always left for yoga. Mark's throat tightened. He sat on the edge of the workbench, gripping the receipt like it was radioactive. Something wasn't adding up, and the more he stared at that motel name, the more a knot formed in his stomach. He suddenly remembered a conversation from weeks ago. Rachel laughing on the phone, saying she loved the spa robes, but the motel in the receipt didn't even have a spa. It barely had a functioning vending machine. That night, Mark said nothing. At dinner, he smiled as Rachel talked about her latest yoga teacher, a woman named Trina. He nodded, pretending to listen, but all he could hear was the rain pounding outside, and the sound of lies piling up like thunder. Coming up next, what happens when Mark tests if her yoga retreat is real, and makes a call she never expected him to make. Stay tuned in the next chapter. The next morning, Mark waited until Rachel left for her class before picking up the phone. He found the number of the retreat center she claimed to attend and called, already expecting the worst. A calm receptionist answered and kindly informed him that no one named Rachel Miller had ever registered for their weekend sessions. His hand tightened around the phone. He thanked her, hung up, and sat motionless at the kitchen table, staring at the steam rising from his untouched coffee. It was no longer suspicion, it was confirmation. He opened his laptop and searched Starlight Inn. The motel had 2 stars, poor reviews, and was the last place someone would choose for a spiritual getaway. Mark zoomed in on the address and noticed it was just a 40-minute drive from their house. He knew he couldn't sit and wait for answers anymore. He needed to see it with his own eyes. He grabbed his keys, got in the car, and drove, rehearsing 1,000 possible excuses she could have had. But none of them felt true. When he arrived at the motel, everything looked exactly how he imagined. Neon sign flickering, curtains drawn in most windows, an eerie quiet hanging in the air. He parked across the street and waited, watching the front entrance. Couple walked out, then an older man with a suitcase, then nothing. His heart nearly stopped when, at exactly 4:57 p.m., Rachel's car pulled into the parking lot. She wasn't alone. A tall man in a navy blazer stepped out from the passenger side. He leaned in and kissed her. Not on the cheek, not like a friend. It was slow, intimate, practiced. Mark felt something inside him break, but instead of confronting her, he ducked low, heart pounding, hands shaking, and pulled out his phone. He snapped a photo, then another. He didn't know what hurt more, the fact she was cheating or the calm, smiling way she walked into that room with another man, like it was routine, like it wasn't even a secret anymore. What will Mark do with those photos? And who exactly is the man with Rachel? Find out in the next chapter. Mark didn't sleep that night. He kept staring at the blurry photos on his phone, zooming in and out like the image might change if he looked long enough, but it never did. It was still Rachel, still that man, still that motel. The next morning he returned, not because he had a plan, he didn't, but because doing nothing felt worse than doing something. This time he parked closer. Room 9, that's where they went. But when Mark approached to listen through the door, something odd caught his eye. The room next to it, room 10, had no number at all. Its door looked newer, less worn, and unlike the others, it had a keypad instead of a standard lock. He crouched down and peered through the narrow window. Inside, he expected to see a bed, maybe a minibar. Instead, there were surveillance monitors, a table with scattered folders, printer, a briefcase. What kind of motel was this? Just then, he heard a door open behind him. Mark ducked and slipped around the side of the building. Heart racing, he waited until the footsteps passed, then pulled out his phone and snapped a photo through the window. He didn't know what he was documenting, but something told him it was bigger than infidelity. Something told him that Rachel's motel fling wasn't the only secret she was keeping, and when he finally zoomed in on one of the folders through the glass, he froze. It had Rachel's name on it, and beneath it, in red stamped ink, confidential, witness protection files. Who was this man she was meeting, and why the hell was her name on government paperwork? Don't miss what happens next. This isn't just a betrayal. It's a ticking time bomb. In the next chapter, Mark spent the entire night piecing together everything he had. Blurry photos, the strange surveillance room, and Rachel's name on that folder. By morning, he still didn't have answers, just more questions. And the one thing he couldn't stop replaying in his mind was the face of the man Rachel met. Not just any man, but someone who looked way too polished for a motel off the highway. He returned to the motel again, this time wearing a hoodie and sunglasses. Trying to blend in, he parked farther down and waited in his car with his phone recording from the dashboard. At exactly 11:42 a.m., Rachel's car pulled in. She got out, wearing the same gray coat he gave her for their anniversary 2 years ago. That hit him harder than he expected. She looked calm, unbothered, happy. Then he saw the man again. Black suit, no tie, dark sunglasses. He wasn't just some fling. The way Rachel greeted him. She hugged him with familiarity, too much familiarity. They walked side by side like they did this often. Mark followed them on foot, pretending to be on a call as they entered room 9. But as soon as the door closed, the man re-emerged. Alone, he walked briskly toward the unnumbered room next door and keyed in a code. Inside, he pulled out a laptop and inserted what looked like a government ID. Mark crept close again and, heart pounding, peeked through the window. What he saw this time made his stomach drop. On one of the monitors inside, there was live footage of several different motel rooms. Room 9 included. They were being watched, or worse, recorded, and on a second screen, there was an email draft open. Subject line: Operation Extraction. Phase 1 confirmed. The man began typing something quickly, and then the screen flickered and displayed a photo. It was Rachel, but the name on the file didn't say Rachel. It said, Samantha Quinn, primary target. Everything Mark thought he knew about his wife crumbled in that moment. Who was she really? What was she being extracted from? And most of all, what had he just walked into? Yuri not ready for what he discovers next. Coming up in the next chapter. Mark didn't sleep that night. He sat in the darkness of his garage, door closed, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel like a man on the edge of unraveling. His mind played the phrase over and over again like a broken record. Samantha Quinn, primary target. His wife's face was burned into the surveillance footage, but the name on the file, it didn't match. He started digging. First her email, then old credit card statements, then an online background check he'd never thought he'd need to run on the woman he built a life with. Nothing came up under Rachel Keller that matched her education, her previous jobs, or even her maiden name. But under Samantha Quinn, a different picture started forming. Multiple travel records under aliases, receipts from luxury hotels in cities she claimed she'd never been to, and a registered vehicle in Nevada, linked to an address that didn't exist on Google Maps. Mark's stomach churned. Was she a con artist? An undercover agent? Or something far worse? Just as the sun began rising, he drove to the city archives and requested the public marriage license he and Rachel filed 7 years ago. The clerk pulled it up, printed the document, and placed it on the counter. Mark's fingers trembled as he read the signature line. She hadn't signed it. Rachel Keller? She had signed it. S. Quinn. His blood ran cold. So the lie began the day they said, I do. The entire marriage, every trip, every shared meal, every I love you, had been wrapped in a name that didn't even belong to her. And then, like a lightning strike, it hit him. If her name was fake, what about everything else? Was the love fake? Was he a target? Or even worse, was he just a cover? What was her real mission? And who the hell was the man in the black suit? You won't believe what he finds when he returns to the motel. In the next chapter, Mark waited until dusk before returning to the motel. He parked across the street in a dented pickup he borrowed from his coworker Tom. Less recognizable than his usual car. Every nerve in his body was wired, every instinct on high alert. Room 214, that's where Rachel, Samantha, had gone 2 nights ago, before she emerged in a black cocktail dress and got into that mysterious black SUV. Now, standing outside the same door, Mark listened. Voices, one male calm, deliberate, one female. Her voice, cold, professional. "I told you the account number isn't safe anymore," she said. "Then we used the senator's backup." The man answered, "I'll handle it after the gala." Mark's breath hitched. Gala? Senator? What the hell was this? He pulled out his phone and started recording audio, but the next thing he heard made his blood run cold. "I'm only staying married to him until after the transfer," Rachel said flatly. "He thinks I love him. He still believes I'm Rachel Keller." Mark staggered back. It wasn't just infidelity. It was calculated betrayal, a setup, a life built on false documents, false emotions, and now, possibly illegal money laundering or espionage. His heart pounded as he quietly backed away toward the parking lot, hand gripping the truck's door handle. But just then, a car pulled up fast behind him. Black, tinted, sleek. The man from the room stepped out. They locked eyes. He smiled. "Nice evening for a walk, isn't it, Mr. Keller?" What happens next will change everything. Don't miss what's coming in the next chapter. Mark's mouth went dry as the man from room 214 stepped closer. His voice low and casual but dripping with threat. "Why don't we go for a ride?" the man said, gesturing toward the back seat of the black SUV. Mark hesitated, but the slight bulge under the man's blazer said there was no real choice. Inside the car, 2 more men sat silently. One was tapping something into a phone. The other stared out the window, sunglasses on even in the dark. The man beside Mark pulled out a sleek folder from the glove compartment and tossed it on Mark's lap. Inside were surveillance photos of him, of his house, of Rachel, no Samantha, entering government buildings, handing off flash drives, laughing with men in expensive suits, and beneath those, a photo of Mark's sister leaving her school, and a note scribbled in thick black ink. "Cooperate or she disappears too. Whatever game you thought you were playing," the man said, leaning in. "You've already lost. You were the patsy, the loyal husband, the paperwork, nothing more." Mark's head spun. Every moment with Rachel now twisted into something grotesque. The late-night calls, the sudden overseas conferences, her perfect timing. It wasn't random, it was planned. "You'll be quiet," the man continued, "and in exchange, you get to live your normal, boring life. Pretend none of this ever happened. But if you don't..." The SUV came to a stop. They were in front of his own house. Mark stepped out slowly, gripping the folder. No words were spoken as the SUV sped off, tires screeching into the night. He stood frozen in the driveway, his porch light flickering. Inside that folder wasn't just betrayal, it was leverage. And now he had a choice: expose everything and risk his family's safety, or play along with the illusion and become a pawn in something far darker than he ever imagined. What will Mark do next? Everything will change. In the next chapter, Mark didn't sleep that night. The folder with the photos sat on his kitchen table, untouched since he dropped it there hours ago. But one line from the man in the SUV echoed louder than the rest. "You were never meant to see what happens in that motel room." He opened his laptop and, with shaking hands, accessed the private cloud camera feed he had installed weeks ago in a panic. When Rachel's patterns first stopped making sense, he had pointed the camera at the back parking lot of the Silver Pines Motel, angled to catch license plates and entrances. The footage loaded slowly, pixelated at first, then clearer. There was Rachel's car. Tuesday, 9:14 p.m. She wasn't alone. Mark zoomed in. The man she exited the car with wasn't the one from the SUV. It was someone else, younger, wearing a city maintenance uniform. They kissed. Then he handed her an envelope. She handed him what looked like a burner phone. Mark leaned back, breath knocked out of him. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was layers on layers. He pulled the footage from the next night. Another man, another envelope, another phone. Over the course of 5 days, Rachel had met with 4 different men at the same room. Each time, she arrived smiling, calm. Each time, she left in tears. On the 6th night, the footage showed something different. Rachel didn't come. Instead, a black van parked behind the motel. 4 men in tactical gear stepped out. The screen glitched, then went black. That feed had never done that before. Mark checked the backup cloud. Corrupted, he felt something cold settle in his chest. The motel wasn't just where she cheated. It was a dead drop zone, a location for covert deals, bribes. Maybe worse. He pulled out his phone and dialed the only person he knew who might still help. His brother Luke, an ex-military intelligence officer. "Luke," Mark said, his voice cracking. "I need you now." The silence on the other end was brief but heavy. "I'll be there in 4 hours. Don't talk to anyone, and burn that folder." But Mark didn't burn the folder. He scanned every photo and backed it all up onto a secret drive. Because he knew this wasn't just about Rachel anymore. This was about something bigger, something that could burn the entire city down. And someone was about to make sure it never saw the light of day. Things spiral in ways no one expects. In the next chapter, Luke arrived just before dawn, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. He didn't ask many questions. Just scanned the motel footage, flipped through the folder, and then locked the door behind them. "Mark," he said, "this isn't just cheating. This is trafficking information, maybe people." Mark sat motionless. His wife, Rachel, the woman he shared a home and a daughter with, was entangled in something far beyond an affair. Luke pointed to the timestamps and phone exchanges. These aren't personal rendezvous. They're time drops, military precision. But it got worse. Rachel's name showed up in one of Luke's old black site briefings. Not directly, just her alias, Elise B., a former contractor suspected of working as a broker between corrupt city officials and shell organizations. Marcus' head spun. Was their whole marriage a cover? Was Emma even safe? They tried calling Rachel, but her number had been disconnected. Her car was gone. Her work hadn't seen her in 3 days. The gym membership, canceled. Bank accounts, emptied. Mark rushed to Emma's school. She never showed up that morning. A deep dread sunk in as he dialed the principal's office. But before he could speak, a black SUV pulled up across the street. Same model, same tinted windows. Only this time, the passenger door opened, and Emma stepped out, alone. No Rachel, just a plain envelope in her hand. She crossed the street and handed it to Mark without a word. He opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a flash drive, and a note in Rachel's handwriting. "You were never supposed to find out, but now that you have, protect Emma, and do not trust Luke." Mark looked up, stunned. Luke was gone, vanished. His phone, dead. His car, still outside. Only now did Mark realize. The true betrayal had just begun. The final chapter reveals everything you thought you knew was a lie. Stay tuned. Mark drove Emma to his sister's house 2 states away. He didn't explain much, only told her that she'd be safe there, and that no matter what, he'd come back for her soon. He hugged her tightly, longer than ever before, and watched as she disappeared behind the front door. Back in his car, he inserted the flash drive. Encrypted. He cracked the first layer using an old decryption tool Luke had once shown him years ago, back when they were just co-workers. Before any of this madness began, the contents shattered everything he thought he knew. Videos, dozens of them. Rachel, sitting across from high-ranking city officials, talking money, blueprints, names, including Luke's. He wasn't just a friend. He was in on it. He had been using Mark to get to Rachel's files, to clean up the last loose end. And the envelope Rachel gave Emma? It didn't just contain a flash drive. Tucked beneath it was a second, smaller note. Check room 214, Tuesday, 11 p.m. Mark's heart pounded. Room 214. The same exact motel Rachel had been disappearing to. The same room number. He didn't tell anyone. The motel manager had no clue who was renting it now. Cash only. Mark used the emergency key and pushed the door open slowly. It was dark. Then a lamp clicked on. Rachel was sitting on the edge of the bed. Alive, different, cold. She looked at him without flinching. "I told you not to follow me, Mark." Mark stepped inside, still stunned. "You left Emma. You left me. You vanished." She stood up, slowly. "I had to disappear. Luke was going to kill you both." She tossed him another flash drive. "This is the real file," she whispered. "It'll bury the entire operation. But once you open it, there's no going back. You'll have to run too." Mark hesitated, and then the door burst open. Luke, gun drawn. But before he could fire, Rachel shot him. Twice. Silence. Mark stared at Rachel. Blood splattered on her hands, her chest heaving. "It's over," she said. But it wasn't. From Luke's jacket, a burner phone buzzed. Mark picked it up and answered. Breathless. "Is it done?" A voice asked. Low, raspy. Not Rachel. Not Luke. Just one word echoed in Mark's mind. Emma. She wasn't safe. They never were. And now they were watching. Was Rachel ever really protecting them? Or setting them up from the start? The end. Or is it?